Welcome to the Fire and Earth podcast with your hosts, Jason Mefford and Kathy Gruber. Fire and Earth, giving you the keys to unlock your limitless potential.
Welcome to another episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. I'm your co-host, Jason Mefford.
And I am Kathy Gruber, and I am so thrilled to introduce another phenomenal guest. We have Mike Mandel here. I've known Mike for years. He is an amazing hypnotist, and he has probably forgotten more than I know about things. So we're thrilled to have him. We're going to talk about some really cool stuff today, so let's dive right in. Very happy to have Mike Mandel here. So Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and your background, and why you're just so fabulous.
Oh, very kind. Sure. Born in England many, many years ago. I'm closer to 70 than 60 now. And we moved to Canada when I was a boy, which is probably just as well. At home, I spoke like this all the time because we're from the north of England.
And I was going to say, you lost the accent.
Well, no, lose it at all. It's just there all the time. But I grew up in Toronto when I was Canadian at school, and I spoke like this when I was at home again. So it's weird. It's in the blood. So we moved to Toronto, and when I was about 12 years old, my father said any book I wanted I could have. He was trying to encourage me to read more. He was an engineer. Ex-British Army, and I went to a bookstore in Toronto, and I saw this used book, I think, in a bin. It was pretty cheap, it's like $2, and it was called The Key to Hypnotism by Walter Gibson, and I was like, oh, it's amazing. So I got this book, and I went out, read the contents, went out searching for someone to hypnotize, and there were two kids lived next door at McLean Animal Hospital. Above the hospital, their dad was a vet tech, and Max Gibbs and Wayne Gibbs, his elder brother. So I was 12, Wayne was maybe 10, Max was maybe 9. And I said, can I hypnotize you guys? They didn't know what I'm talking about. They said, yeah. So Max just thought it was a big joke. Wayne, I got him in trance, my first attempt. And I made his hand cataleptic, and he had glove anesthesia. And I stuck pins like literally through the tip of one of his fingers. And it was bleeding like crazy. And he was looking at it, didn't feel it. And his parents didn't find it nearly as interesting as I did. And I was banned from doing that stuff. But I found out I had a knack for it at an early age. And even walking home from high school when I was like 13, 14, there were a couple of friends who would walk home with me, and I'd get in a conversation, and I could make them angry with each other and step out of the frame, and they'd wind up wrestling on someone's lawn, pissed off with each other. And I realized now I was using embedded commands and Ericksonian patterns without having a clue what the hell they were. So the interesting thing is 10 years ago, I ran into Wayne Gibbs, and he's in his 50s, late 50s now, or was then. And we put it on Facebook. I said, here he is, patient zero. He said, what are you doing these days? I remember you used to hypnotize me, stick pins through my fingers. I said, funny you should say that.
You stop putting pins through people's fingers though, right?
But so I had a knack for hypnosis as a kid. As crazy as it sounds, I was sort of a hypnosis savant. I always found it ridiculously easy to get people into trance. And then started doing stage shows. And my first show was January 1975. Did about 5,000 shows, Canada, US, Britain, Australia, Caribbean. Loved it. 5 years ago, got sick of it. That was at the 40-year in the road mark. And I retired from the stage about a year and a half ago. And now I just do the teaching full time. I saw Tony Robbins, got interested in NLP. This is 1992. Got an NLP practitioner certificate, then master practitioner. Then went on under John Grinder to be an NLP trainer in NLP New Code. And I was doing hypnosis shows still back then, including the Ontario Police College, had me in over 100 times. And they loved it. And I hypnotized more police than any other demographic. I think I have the world's largest private army. We only need, we've already got guns, they just need the trigger word.
Can we get on that? Because we can help.
Absolutely. So the bottom line was, they started asking me to do forensic work for them. And I wound up teaching their advanced interviewing module. I started doing police lectures across Canada and then in Virginia and New York, and providing forensic hypnosis because I created a method that does not and cannot cause false memory syndrome. And that was sort of the start of all that. And then I connected with my best friend, Chris Thompson. He saw me teaching, and I used to work with NLP Canada. My mentor, Derek Balmer, passed away in 2000, and Chris took over the business, and he positioned Toronto as the hypnotic world epicenter. And when the world started showing up, 2 psychiatrists from Singapore, people from India and Africa and Britain and Australia, New Zealand, we were just amazed. And that's where we are now. We teach training 5-day intensives at the University of Toronto 3 times a year. I still do the forensic work occasionally when they ask me to. And we do all the hypnosis conferences and have an online hypnosis academy. Just have a blast with this field because it still fascinates me.
Yeah. And you make it so fascinating. And I think this past year in Vegas is the first time I actually did one of your like 3-hour workshops. I had done some of the little snippets of stuff. Which
one was that? Yeah.
Did I do rapid inductions maybe? Because you
yeah.
actually did hypnotize me. It was beautiful.
I have no recollection of that, Yana.
I woke up with these pins in my fingers. It was the weirdest thing. Yeah, I don't know what happened. No, but it was incredible. And so I started taking some of your online courses, and I've already learned so much from you. You're my new go-to guy, because you just, like I said, you just have such a breadth of knowledge. But one of the things you do, and you've done a couple times, and you've started with, is this tapping thing that you do, which I find fascinating and really exciting. And Jason and I are into that sort of thing. So why don't you explain what that is, and then lead us through one of them?
Yes, absolutely. It was an interesting discovery from an obscure book on using acupuncture meridians. I can't remember which one. And when Igor Ledohovsky did a 5-hour interview with me, and he asked me for a takeaway for his students, and I gave him this, and he freaking loved it. I do this for every single class we teach. We do this first. Now, what this does is it puts you in the zone in 30 to 40 seconds, and it brings a very powerful ego state, which we will discuss, into the executive. And so what you're going to do is you're going to tap on the back of your non-dominant hand. So if you're ambidextrous, you can use either. It doesn't matter which one you use. But between the ring finger and the baby finger, between the metacarpals, there's a channel about 2 fingertips wide, and the 2 fingers fit neatly into that channel. You'll know you got it. Now, you can do it tap like this, or you can do it flat. It doesn't matter, firmly and fairly quickly. And you say this as though you believe it, even if you don't. So we're going to do it together. You guys ready?
Okay.
Yep.
Here we go. I am in the zone.
I am in the zone.
I am feeling awesome.
I am feeling awesome.
My brain is supercharged.
My brain is supercharged.
All my resources are online.
All my resources are online.
I feel fantastic.
I feel fantastic.
I am super smart.
I am super smart.
And I am the God Hypnos in human form.
And I am the God Hypnos in human form.
There you go. I feel that tingle.
Yeah.
I often add an awesome anchor at the end.
Yeah.
The tip of the ring finger. Awesome.
Okay, so this is interesting for me, because this is the first time that I've heard it kind of from this angle. I've heard Jack Canfield talk about tapping before, right? Because I can't remember the name of the person that he was referring to, but he uses this sometimes in what he's doing. But even as we were just doing this here, and then we stopped and kind of did the arms out, I felt like an energy shift go through my body.
Tingle go through your spine.
You feel a tingle go through your body, right?
Yeah.
So very, very interesting, because now I'm seeing this kind of from a different perspective and everything too. I mean, this is something that people can use, like if you're feeling down, you're not feeling that great.
Definitely. Right? This should be part of everybody's
start tapping and doing that. We did that, 20 seconds, something like that?
30 seconds. 30 to 40 will do it. And this is how powerful this is. The thing about it, Jason, that you'll like is if you use it regularly, so you can do it really fast. It's very strong. The power of this came to me in 2004. I was hired by a multi-millionaire Australian rock star to go from Toronto to Australia, flew me down business class, paid me a whack of money to work with him for a week to deal with some of his issues. Day 1, I could not get him into hypnosis. Now that is very unusual for me. Day 2, I was using NLP, timeline, everything, could not get anything to work with him. And this is what cracked his state open so I could get in. And this guy had lost his mojo, his confidence around women. And I got him tapping this, and I got him saying, I'm confident around women. And he's like, I'm confident around women, Mike. And I said, say it like you mean it. I'm confident around women. I said, say I'm a swinging dick. He goes, I'm a swinging dick. Like this. You see it install. He goes, I'm a swinging dick. Like this.
All of a sudden he had that breakthrough.
We went out for lunch. We went outside the building, and his secretary was there. She came up and said, how's the therapy going? He goes, I'm a swinging dick. She said, I don't know what you're doing, but he needs more of this. But it's such a powerful tool. It will bring your most congruent and powerful and assertive ego state to the executive. You're stating all of the positives as though you already have them.
Yeah. I did this before a talk. I was really tired. What did I do, Jason? Something like 7 talks in 4 cities in 6 days. And by the end, I was so like, and so I sat there, and before I went on stage, I'm like, I am an amazing speaker. I connect with everybody in the audience. I have boundless energy, and and I used it. I got out there, I was like, yeah, I was a rock star.
Fantastic. I love it. I love it when you apply this stuff. That's so cool.
It was so fabulous.
And this adds, the tapping adds another component to it, right? I mean, I've done a lot of work around like multisensory learning, and the more senses and other things that we are actually engaging with, the better our brain actually processes it, right? So again, I mean, you're doing a touch along with a hearing and in a movement of the mouth. So you're using touch twice, you're hearing it. So you're doing at least two senses with that. But like you said, there's a channel or something that's right in here too, right? That hits your nervous system somehow too. So it's actually, because I know sometimes when we talk about this stuff, people are like, oh, that's woo-woo crazy shit. Yeah. And it's like, well, yeah, except, right? There's neuroscience behind this but as to why it works.
It's a little bit.
yeah.
Now, here's the thing. You nailed a good point there. When we add the awesome anchor, so I tell people to use the tip of their ring finger in their thumb, because they don't typically contact that much. When they're in the zone, and if you do the tapping, the best way to do it is to stay relaxed and do it standing. Then the power is even stronger. Now you get to the point where you've got this rush, you immediately press the tip of your ring finger to your thumb, you stare at it and say, awesome. Now you are anchoring this state in 3 systems. Kinesthetically, you can feel it, auditorily because you're hearing yourself say it, and visually as well. And at the end of our 5-day architecture of hypnosis, we typically get someone who's got an issue. Now, they've been setting this anchor all week. Someone they have a problem with, someone they can't stand, or an argument they had that really bothers them. Get the person to think of it, get them to shrink it down, put it over there, low down on the floor, stare at it, and fire their awesome anchor. And they invariably say, the picture's just fragmented, it's fallen apart. Okay, breathe. How do you feel about that person now? I don't feel anything. I couldn't care less. And the effect lasts, which is so cool. You're right. It's the neuroscience behind it.
Well, yeah, because you're bringing in the anchoring, which is a part of NLP, if I remember correctly, right?
Yes.
So whatever you end up doing, like you said, your thumb to ring finger, because again, that's something that you don't normally do all the time, right? And again, this is where kind of the hypnosis and other stuff ends up coming in, is as we're training the subconscious brain, we're using the anchors. And every time we anchor, like one that I've been doing is, when you close your eyes and hear the word yes, it bounces around inside your head, right? So again, it's kind of like an anchoring. You close your eyes, you say yes, you hear it, it bounces around in your head. It anchors you back to whatever that thing is that you've kind of reprogrammed yourself to do. Right?
Nice. I like it a lot. That's a good one.
Is that a great summary of kind of what we're doing here with the anchoring too?
Yes.
Okay.
Certainly is.
Woo, I'm learning something, Kathy.
Jason knows stuff. Yay. Very exciting. So why don't we go ahead and talk about ego states? Because I think when people hear that, they're probably thinking not what we're about to talk about.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. Ego state theory goes back to a contemporary of Sigmund Freud, who was Paul Federn. He began to look at the possibility of there being subpersonalities. And from Federn, the work was picked up by a husband and wife psychology team, Watkins and Watkins. Probably the leader in the work in it today is Gordon Emerson out of Australia, another psychologist. This is mainstream. This isn't woo-woo now. We now know that the average person has anywhere between 100, let's say 50 and 150 ego states. These are subpersonalities. And we have ego states for all sorts of different tasks. When we recognize that we have them, we begin to notice they talk differently than each other. They have different mannerisms and so on. When I am teaching jujitsu, I do not want the ego state present that plays with my Egyptian Mao cat. I don't want to be, oh, is it good? No, I want to be locked in my most aggressive, powerful state. Likewise, if I'm studying, I want an ego state that's going to learn the information quickly. And the difference between us and people with dissociative identity disorder, that used to be called multiple personality, is our ego states know about each other for the most part. Now, realize they aren't psychological constructs. These are burned into your physical brain. These are neural pathways that are burned in. They are created usually in childhood for specific purposes. And then they are run digitally, meaning only one ego state can be executive at any given time. So When it is executive, that ego state lights up in your brain and connects to executive function in your prefrontal cortex here. The one that is executive is the one that's running the show. Now, we've all had things like you go into the kitchen and you go, or another room, you say, what the hell did I just come in here for? Now, the ego state that told you to go into that room is no longer executive. Another one is. Mm-hmm. And you'll even hear things like the drunk who loses his car keys. He can't find them until he's drunk again. Then he remembers where they are. Because that ego state is executive when he's drunk. And there's two great models here that really help people understand it. One is the classroom model. I'll give you this and I'll give you an even better one. The classroom model says, imagine a class, a lot of kids, and the teacher's chair at the desk is vacant. And in the classroom, there's groups of kids who hang around together. They've been friends for years and they talk a lot and they're very fun. Then there might be the class clown. Then there might be a couple of bullies in the class. There might be someone standing in the corner. There might be kids who've not talked in years. They're timid. They're not part of any groups. Whichever kid is sitting in the teacher's chair running the class, that is the one that is executive at that moment. And so the better model even is the model of a house. Imagine a bungalow, and executive is whoever answers the front door. Now, in the living room, the main floor, you've got about 5 to 15 ego states that hang out there and they are generally available. Now, down in the basement, you got ego states that don't come up too often. And then there's a bomb shelter off to the side. And
where you don't want to go there.
That's where you don't want to go, but actually you do, because those are ego states they're called vaded. Vaded means invaded by fear, anger, sadness, trauma. They're the ones that need to be healed and brought back into the community. Now, why this is so critical is sometimes we'll be using an NLP intervention or hypnosis or even the tapping stuff, which I've had phenomenal results with my own 6-step tapping sequence. But there are the times it did not work, even though I thought I did everything right. The reason why is you must have the vaded ego state executive when you're doing the tapping. Otherwise, you have another ego state observing. And we see this with smoking cessation. The guy phones, he wants an appointment, oh, I'm desperate to quit. But the ego state that shows up in the office is not necessarily the one that made the appointment. So instead of the one that feels the stress, the distress, you've got one that intellectually thinks about it. So the way to get around it is if you're doing the tapping, and someone says, I'm scared of snakes. Well, what's it like? Oh, it's pretty bad. You've got the wrong ego state executive. You get them to feel it in their body. How do you feel it when you see a snake? By getting them to feel it, which is the affect bridge in hypnosis too. You are now bringing the vaded ego state to the executive. And now when you treat it, it'll make all the difference in the world.
Mm-hmm. Is there a way, Mike, to bring this into the consciousness? So like if I'm going into a business meeting, I could consciously say, okay, I want business Kathy. And if I'm going on a first date, I can say, okay, I want romantic frivolous Kathy. I mean, can we like just call those up? I mean, I know we kind of switch through them naturally.
Right.
Speaking of Snow White, but Jason and I had a whole episode about, I just did a coaching program where people in the group saw what they observed in our personality and then they saw what they wanted to observe more. And everyone said that I was, the ambitious, the driven, the tough girl, the no nonsense, the get it done type A person. And they wanted to see a little more love and a little more tenderness. And so I had to walk around the rest of the day being Snow White. That was the part of the personality that's fucking Snow White. This is the part of my personality that they wanted me to bring out, which is certainly in there. I mean, my God, I cried everything, but they didn't get to see that. So my name tag for the rest of the day said Snow White. I didn't get the fun, like, what was the one, Stinky Stinky dancer is what I wanted, but I didn't get that one because I guess I'm that normally. So I don't know what that means. But yeah, I mean, but is there a way that we can, no pun intended, tap into those ego states to bring them forward when we need them?
Yes, because you do not want business Kathy at a romantic meeting, at a romantic event, dinner or something. Likewise, I did a hypnosis show at a theater east of Toronto many years ago. And my wife's best friend said, oh, it was a good show, but he didn't seem himself. I said, what? She said, oh, he was sort of teaching everybody. He wasn't very entertaining. I had been teaching all week, and my teaching ego state had stayed executive instead of my entertaining ego state, which is quite a different one. They can both do hypnosis. So what you do is the old method is you get a shopping list. What do you want this state to be? And of your 150, the one that closely matches it is the one that will show it. Remember, they want to do jobs. They want to help you. They like being executive. So that's what we're doing with the tapping on the hand. Just make sure your shopping list is the one for that ego state, and you will bring it to the executive.
Yeah.
So you
Well,
say,
and
I
it's,
want to be romantic, or I am romantic, etc. Go ahead.
well, I was going to say, because it's interesting as you bring this up too, because, you know, in kind of like peak performance type of vein, right? Where again, it's like you're trying to bring out that future self, or that, you know, what we're referring to kind of as the ego state. If you need CEO Jason to show up and be there to be able to get what you want to have in the future, you need to have that ego state show up more often, right? And so again, but it's interesting, you know, again, as you're saying this, because I'm drawing the parallels from different places, you know, like that, where it's like, okay, I've got a speech that I've got to give, you know, or like you said, you know, when you were doing the stage show, you need entertainer Mike to show up, not teacher Mike to show up at that point. And so we can kind of consciously say again, and if we're having trouble, you know, with maybe some self-doubt or other stuff, well, there again, there's a great opportunity to use that tool that we just talked about with tapping to be able to pull out that other ego state and be in the right frame of mind to get done what we needed to do.
You're totally bang on with that. In fact, ego states will cooperate with each other. I found that when I teach, I have a teacher ego state, and I have two others that accompany me. I see them as one on each side. The one on my right is the librarian, and that's the name it gave itself. And when someone asks me an obscure question, you know, translogic, what is translogic? The librarian gives me the information right away. I was 1959 at University of Pennsylvania. M.T. Ornay did the first work in it before he met Georgia, and bang, it's there. Now, there's also on the other side a state which is a classic archetype. It's the jester. And all he does is monitor the class, listen to me, and throw in zingers. That's it.
Yep.
I've
seen it.
I'm a Presbyterian, but he's like a Jewish comic. He's fantastic. So he's waiting in the background. And the funny thing is, I can feel that he's about to become executive and say something, but I don't know what he's going to say. And then I'll say the line, everybody laughs. The librarian notes the line and files it for future use, and the state comes back. You've seen it?
Yes, and I'm so glad you said that, because when I have that exact same thing happen, except I have this little like accountant guy, and he sits at a desk with the visor and the green banker light, and he like looks for shit for me, like he researches stuff. And then I have the like da Kathy, and then it's noted, because this is how the comedy comes out. And when as a speaker is you say something and there's a part of you that notes, oh, okay, I'm going to keep that. And then the task is to make it new every single time, because the first time I spoke at HypnoThoughts, I did a talk on marketing, and I went through this whole list of things that didn't work for me. And I said, and I didn't mean this to come out this way, but it did. I said, yeah, I was asked, you know, did I want to have my picture on this park bench at this golf tournament? And, you know, I got nothing out of it except people sat on my face all summer.
Right.
And everyone started laughing, and I went, oh shit, okay, note that. And there was a part of my brain that went,
that one worked.
Yeah, it was hilarious, and I didn't mean it to come. It just sort of came out of my mouth that way, and I realized, okay, I need to hang on to that. And once again, we've blown through a half hour. So, Mike, you had some cards that you wanted to talk about.
I want to mention
close off this.
These are called interactive cards, and you can get them online. I buy them from Caversham Books in Toronto. They ship them anywhere, and these cards are mind-blowing. I've done a lot of self-work over the years. I don't know if you ever heard my keynote at HypnoThoughts last year.
God,
but
so
the whole thing about the bear, you know, the teddy bear in the keynote. These cards are all these remarkable archetypal pictures, and you're not going to be able to see them. But some of them are wounded, and some are like look at this, sort of a party guy, and a bouncer, and here's my jester.
Yeah.
What these enable you to do is work with the client and do self-work as well. So you can sit down, sort of get in the zone. Go through the cards. Do I relate to this one? Yes. Do I relate to? No. All the ones you don't relate to, you put back in the box. The ones you do, you start to group them on the floor. Oh yeah, this is when, and this is when. Now when you've got the grouping, you can take one, pick it up, and externalize it. You can talk to that ego state and say, look, I don't like it when you do this. I know you're attempting to help me. It's mind-blowing. I dealt with two, one called Happy Pig and one called Wellness Man. And Happy Pig, eat cheese sandwiches at 11 p.m. and handfuls of dried fruit and blowing up to 190 pounds. And Wellness Man now determines when Happy Pig can binge. And so now I only eat once a day. I do OMAD, 1 meal a day. And Happy Pig has 1 hour to eat as much as he wants. And Wellness Man keeps an eye on things and reminds me to exercise too.
Nice.
So check the cards out. Interactive cards, they're not mine. I didn't come up with them, but I think they're just absolutely freaking amazing.
That's fabulous. I love it. I love it. And I'm so glad because I've always felt like different parts of me came out and did things, and I used to name them, and people thought I was crazy. They're like, do you have a problem? Do we need to call somebody? I'm like, no, we all have different aspects of our personalities that we bring out.
Yes.
Jason and I have talked about this on so many shows. So, this has been spectacular. All right. We have to let you go. All right, Jason, final thoughts.
Well, I was especially at the end there where you were talking about the archetypes, because it reminded me again, there's a museum up in Seattle. It used to be the Hendrix Music Experience. Now I think it's called Pop Culture or something like that. Anyway, there's a display in there about fantasy, about fantasy books, about Tolkien, and kind of the rise of like the whole fantasy stuff in the last 150 years. And I remember there was a picture that I saw there, and it had a list of all these different archetypes that are used in the fantasy stories, which I'm guessing when I get a deck of these cards, they're going to be very, very similar. And it's kind of funny because we use those in story creation, right? But it's also, why do we do that? Because they're all a part of us as well, right? There's that jester in all of us, but are we letting that jester out when they need to be let out? And we talk a lot about, unlocking potential. And like you said, if librarian Kathy shows up at the wrong time, then it just doesn't work, right? And the more that we can kind of tap into this, I'll use that one as a pun, right?
Brilliant.
Thanks, Kathy. That we can actually let these people out more when we need them to be there to help us get to where we really want to be, right?
Yes,
so even like
they are us.
They are us. And so even like, when you were talking about the rock star, I'm a big swinging dick. Well, he's a rock star. He is a big fucking swinging dick, right?
Yeah.
But he wasn't believing that or letting that out. And obviously that has an impact on him professionally. That's why he flew you down there and said, dude, come on, you got to help me. Right. And we all need that kind of help. So this is, I'm geeking out today. This was like,
I am too.
so many of these things that are kind of coming together from other different things that I've learned as well. So
Convergence.
it is. It's a convergence, and it really is. I think, like you said, there's some very, very practical things that we talked about today too, that people can actually start using. I mean, I'm going to start when I start doing my affirmations, because I usually say them and write them to try to do multisensory. But now when I'm saying them, I'm going to be tapping.
And you're going to be standing up.
And I'm going to be standing up, and I'm going to go whew, at the end.
And you're going to anchor it.
And then I'm going to anchor it.
With your awesome anchor.
Awesome anchor. This has been so fabulous. So Mike, tell everybody how they can reach you if they want to look at some of your courses and some of your products and all that good stuff.
Mike Mandel, hypnosis.com. And it's Mandel with 1 L. Mandel, MikeMandelHypnosis.com, or check out our Brain Software podcast on iTunes or the podcast player of your choice. We're up to episode 139.
Woohoo! We're catching up to you.
I know you are.
And now I've got another one that I can add to my weekly repertoire.
Oh, it's so good. It's so fun. Yeah. Anyway, all right, this has been another phenomenal show. I'm Kathy Groover. I can be reached at kathygroover.com.
And I'm Jason Mefford. I can be reached at jasonmefford.com. And we'll see you on a future episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. Take care.
See ya.